Good evening. I'd like to begin by thanking the City of Boston and Alta for allowing me to present tonight. My name is Tom Swinson, and I'm a member of a much larger team that's been tasked with looking at the critical challenges facing the Hubway bike sharing system, a system that's so important to the Metro Boston area. But without a doubt, rebalancing is the most critical challenge facing the system today. Over the next 10 to 11 minutes, if we're lucky, we're going to take and address a lot of the core issues and come up with some options for correcting rebalancing. But some of the things we'll bring to light tonight will include the 85% service standard. We'll look at the projected throughput or volume of riders in 2014. We're going to look at rebalancing as a whole, and finally we're going to make some recommendations to the advisory committee as to what we feel are options for them to pursue, real options, practical options. But when you look at the Hubway as a whole, the Hubway bike sharing system, it started in 2011 through an agreement with the City of Boston in Alta bicycle share, and that was later extended over to 3 additional municipalities, Brookline, Cambridge, and Somerville, under a separate agreement. But the system itself is seamless despite the 2 different agreements existing. Who's responsible for what? Well, the municipalities, they own the bikes, they own the docking stations. Alta, they're responsible for operations and maintenance, and we later learned through additional research that they also handle insurance liability. There's a great pricing model in place that's available on page 3 as well, but it looks at the casual users with a $6 daily pass or 3 days for $12, regular users $20 a month, annual members $85 annually, annual members if low income households, if they qualify for that, it's a $5 pass per person, which includes the helmet. So why would people or why would Boston in general choose to put a bike sharing system in place? Well, it was basically to reduce Boston metro traffic congestion, provide better access to mass transit, help reduce the carbon footprint, and also to put people on bicycles, get them active in the community. Here's just a quick, there's a timeline that provides some details, some milestones from the 1990s through 2014, but the 2011 to 2014 milestones are probably the most important for you to look at, and encourage you, as part of the hard copy we provided, to take a look at that to familiarize yourself with those milestones. So let's continue looking at the business model. The operational maintenance costs for the system were covered by fees by riders, and at the same time, the capital costs were accounted for the program with funds solicited from private sponsorships such as New Balance, and also federal and state grants and some municipal funds. But to show you how profitable the system is, in 2013 alone, at the end of the calendar year of 2013, $1 million in revenue was split between the municipalities, with Boston taking the largest share. Let's look at the target sectors very quickly. The target sectors we're targeting would be technology, healthcare, and finance, and then also biotech industries and educational institutions. Those are where a lot of the population density is located as far as the jobs, etc. But the target audience would be metro labor, students, recreationists, tourists, and other visitors, low-income households, and then people taking general trips for such as shopping, etc. Safety has been one of the major concerns globally about bike sharing systems, but Boston has done an exceptional job in making sure that the corridors are clearly identified, marked, and even widened. So kudos to the City of Boston and the metro area for that. Hubway staff is comprised of 26 full-time employees. Of that, 13 are responsible for the Sprinter vans that handle the rebalancing of the system. And what is rebalancing? Rebalancing is basically taking inventory where it's excessive at one location and shifting that inventory to where it's really needed to meet demand. So Hubway has placed a lot of focus on improving rebalancing. They've done this through better van dispatch plans, improved maintenance and repair planning, and valet service supporting the two busiest sections. Real quickly, we'll look at the critical fractal. And again, I advise you to look throughout the report. There's a much deeper dive into the report and things we found, but let's take a quick look at critical fractal, which represents Hubway's optimal in-stock rate. In other words, this is the ratio. It represents the optimal number of bikes and docks needed at each location during the 3 peak times for each service day in order to maximize profit and meet demand, as well as fulfill customer expectations. Moving to the 85% standard. What is this? Well, this is basically means that the station is neither full nor empty 85% of the time. Okay, and as part of the 2000, and this is in both the 2011 and 2014 agreements. But however, in the 2014 agreement, there is a $1,000 penalty if Alta cannot maintain that standard, which we will address later on as part of the conclusion. Looking at our analysis, we first estimated the number of trips for 2014, which was around 1.4 million trips. We estimated the mean for the number of trips during that same 3-year period, and that number came to 938,886. From there, we came up with our standard deviation for 341, which was 341,699, which helped us to determine Q. Plugging in the data that we found thus far into Excel, determining Q, we determined that would be equal to about 1.3 million trips. We also developed an operating budget, which we'll explain later in our conclusion, but that budget was based upon the $1.7 million in expenditures by Alta. And then we looked at the commitments to assets and infrastructure, and we also included a supplemental budget inside their contingency budget that we could use, that we highly recommend that we would use as part of the rebalancing solution. We don't have to spend all the $2.87 million, but we do want to make sure that we're adequately covered. And we think as to today, we've been inadequately covered in the operation and maintenance area because of that. Okay, so we determined next our cost of overage at $2.10. And we determined our cost of underage at $11.90. So cost of overage $2.10, cost of underage $11.90. We looked at Alta's estimated revenue for calendar year 14. We utilized the information here to determine that the critical fracture was 0.35, which basically means 35% service standard, which would equate to about 807,222 annual trips. We then looked at the number of bikes we'd have to take and bring the standard, the 85% standard, or to achieve the 85% standard service standard, and we determined that there were 782 additional bikes needed, which would result in about $940,000 in bike expenditures. So our conclusion is the 85% service standard is not reasonable and cannot be sustained through the analysis. The analysis identifies the estimated O&M of 2014 that amounts to $2.879 million, reflects about a 69.4% increase over the CY 13 expenditures realized by Alta in the O&M area. The analysis finds that the current system is only capable of adequately addressing up to about 807,200 some odd annual trips, but at the same time, that falls far short of the projected almost 1.4 million trips that we project under the analysis. The number of annual trips has increased by an average of 50% annually, while investment infrastructure has lagged at a sad 20%. So, we're really a victim of our own success here, and we haven't been able to keep up with the amount of people adopting this program. So it's really presented a problem, particularly in the area of rebalancing. The 782 additional bikes that we found that were needed to bring us up to meet the 85% service standard is around $940,000, which is about a 55.2% increase over the CY13 operating and maintenance budget, or actually expenditures that we experienced at 1.7 million. In addition, the purchase of additional bikes would be hampered because the primary manufacturer, the only manufacturer that we deal with, is now going through bankruptcy proceedings in the European courts, and that also has placed some stress on and on the receiving the right parts to maintain the bike. So, we're highly suggesting the advisory committee move very swiftly to identify other other options, either domestically or globally, to produce these bikes, because this could be a bigger problem faster than we think. Rebalancing is and will remain the single largest critical challenge of 2014. We're stressing to the advisory committee that they move very quickly to evaluate these options, to bring in additional experts through knowledge experts, or to look at other systems around the globe that have experienced similar issues. Demand-based pricing, I think the advisory committee would agree that this has some legs and some validity, and we're asking that this be explored in more depth to determine if this could bring value to the rebalancing problem. The purchase of an additional van requiring additional labor would only add to the Boston region's carbon footprint, in addition to adding $67,000 to the O&M expense. But at the end of the day, that's a very little impact on a $2.8 million budget. So I think we need to take a critical look at that, but we don't want to throw money at issues without having some statistics and some research to back it up. But that clearly is still on the table. While bike power trailers are an option, the analysis as part of the analysis, but we question whether those are viable in terms of moving through the city traffic to be effective. But we need some additional research done on that. Also, the $1,000 per day penalty, we're asking that be temporarily February done away with, in order that we can, as partners, come to a resolution. Because again, we've created this issue as partners. We're a victim of our own success. It's hard to penalize them for something that we've allowed to happen as well by expanding the system. The final analysis and final comment would be that, again, we've got to move very quickly on this. We've got to make some decisions. We've got to find, we've got to throw out some options, or put some options into motion that are on the table to do something. But first, we want to make sure which are the most optimal options and which would make the most sense, that would drive results in rebalancing. So at the end of the day, I'll open the floor for questions, either virtually or through postings. But thank you very much for your time and for your attention.